Hello, and welcome to the ALCTS webinar on VIVO and the Role of Librarians, Part 1. Part 2 of this two-part series will be Wednesday, March 14th. I'm Amanda Stone, a member of the ALCTS Continuing Education Committee. I will be your host for today's webinar. Our presenter today is Violeta Ilik, the Head of Cataloging and Metadata Services at Frank Melville Jr. Library, Stony Brook University. Violeta has experience in managing content creation and dissemination of print and digital resources, supporting scholars' online identity with researcher management systems, and providing support for faculty, students, and staff on scholarly communication issues. Violeta brings much experience to today's topic, and we are fortunate to have her with us today. A few logistics for today's presentation. All attendees are muted to prevent background noise, and we do not have interactive chat capabilities. You may, however, comment on today's presentation using Twitter. The hashtag is ALCTSCE. We do not monitor the Twitter feed, so if you have questions for Violeta, please type them into the question box on your screen. We will have time for Q&A after the presentation. This webinar is being recorded, and you will receive an email with links to the recording and presentation slides shortly after the presentation concludes. And now, here is Violeta. There will be a slight delay as we change presenters.
Hello, can you hear me, guys? Okay. Hope everybody is ready for this two-part series webinar. As Amanda already mentioned, the part 2 will be held on March 14 at the same time. I wish to thank ALCTS for giving me the opportunity to present this webinar. First, a little bit about me. I am currently the head of cataloging and metadata services at Stony Brook University Library. I started my library career at Texas A&M University as a library specialist in cataloging department and ended up as a semantic technologies librarian in the Office of Scholarly Communications because of the initiative I started, and that initiative is VIVO. My initial idea was to create a VIVO instance which will provide unique stable URIs for all researchers on campus to be used in name authority records. Those records would be entirely comprised of trustworthy data because the data will be coming directly from campus data stores that we own or license. At A&M, I also successfully convinced library administration to provide funding for a related project, Symplectic Elements, with the idea to support the VIVO project with the data. After that, I was at Northwestern University's Feinberg School of Medicine for 3 years, where I had a chance to work and lead many digital initiatives projects, including implementing Symplectic Elements, which was actually implemented quite successfully due to the wide support our library director, Christy Holmes, had provided for such an initiative on campus. I also had a chance to work on the VIVO project, led by the team at Center for Data Science and Informatics at Feinberg School of Medicine. So our goals for today are to gain a deeper understanding of the VIVO Semantic Web Platform, learn how to find the right resources for the new VIVO implementation, and this includes data sources, team members, governance models, and support structures. On March 14, our goals will be to provide a valuable guide to best practices in modeling RDF data by utilizing data integration tools and learn more about the ontology, Sparkle, and all the other related RDF jazz. Some brief VIVO history. Cornell created VIVO as a relational database for the life sciences in 2003. Then in 2016, Cornell University expanded to all disciplines and converted to semantic web application. And in 2009, the VIVO was awarded an NIH grant on which the PI was Dr. Michael Conlon, who is the current VIVO project director. In 2013, VIVO joined DuraSpace open source portfolio. So what is VIVO? I'm sure you all have heard about VIVO, but I'll just go briefly into explaining that this is an open source semantic web application that enables the discovery of research and scholarship across disciplines in an institution. VIVO harvests data from verified sources and offers detailed profiles of faculty and researchers. Public structure linked data about investigators' interests, activities, and accomplishments, and VIVO is a tool to use to advance the science on campus, basically. Not only that VIVO code is open source, it's also completely free to download, of course, but the VIVO community wants to help you make your VIVO site successful. So there are hundreds of members that can provide assistance, advice, and experience. We have a lot of resources, wikis, listservs, open calls, Slack channels, community events, in which you can network with other VIVO institutions and some of our registered service providers like Clarivat, which are doing an amazing job actually supporting the VIVO project. VIVO is flexible and customizable. It has been used in organizations of all sizes, from a single research group to a consortium of universities. VIVO also adapts completely to the unique situations and requirements of your institution. Because it's open source, your organization can decide what kind of information to display on the VIVO profiles, as well as which features to implement and how they are presented. VIVO is a full enterprise application capable of showcasing the work of institutions of all sizes, big and small. More than 154 organizations in 26 countries, these are the latest numbers I got from the VIVO project director, use VIVO to provide consistent, open, public information about research and scholarship. Using information from local databases, which are authoritative and verified to manage human resources, grants, then we have the teaching, and other systems. VIVO leverages this existing institutional systems and populates profiles with confirmed information. And that's the key word here, confirm and verify information. Repurposing this data saves researchers time and takes advantage of investments in existing systems. And different VIVO sites may look quite different, but in most cases, VIVO is a way to find researchers. It's the data model is basically centered around people. VIVO is an expert locator. VIVO helps local and global communities connect to expertise in your institution. Anyone looking for expertise can search by keywords or, let's say, a topic to find researchers and their scholarly output. VIVO creates researcher profiles, typically including their titles, affiliations, contact information, as well as research outputs such as publications, grants, other traditional and non-traditional scholarly outputs. So VIVO is basically a research discovery tool. It makes your institution's research accessible and explorable. Maybe that's exactly the reason why we want VIVO. And we basically wanted to create a coordinated faculty research information management strategy where lots of data is put together in a data hub or data warehouse. Institutions could integrate data in a research data warehouse, providing data to central administrators and units. This is essentially the so-called private distribution method. Doing so could provide benefits to stakeholders at many levels. So, for example, as related to faculty, administrators can get information about them without burdening the faculty and asking them to send documents about, annual accomplishments, because in VIVO you can generate annual reporting if you set it up like that. Even you can create with the VIVO data even websites, right? Administrators can use that data in dashboards, reporting, analysis, and decision-making. They can support the initiatives that rely on faculty and research data. As related to institutions, for example, they can see the full picture from the reporting that can help them in decision-making, like identifying the gaps, building strengths, and last but not least, branding. Everybody is concerned about branding of their institution. Going further, creating public web profiles and research data visualizations enables local and global communities to discover an institution's research, increasing impact, reach, and value. Public data is more likely to be repurposed because people can see it and think of ways to use it. It's also more likely to be corrected by people who know how to do that. Public web profiles help faculty promote their work to colleagues, students, patients, sponsors, partners. So VIVO also includes an extensive collection of visualizations of scholarly activity, including this map of global collaborations developed at Cornell University for the new implementation of VIVO called Scholars at Cornell. It's an outstanding implementation of VIVO. All visualizations I'll show in the next, I think, 4 slides are from Scholars at Cornell. And if you have questions, I recommend you contact Mohammed Javed, Dr. Mohammed Javed from Cornell University, who has worked very hard on this. So VIVO has research interest visualization associated with faculty members, as you can see here. And those are the terms associated with the with research interest, and in the middle you can see which are the faculty members that have those research interests. This, for example, is data about visualizations about grants and contracts with all data available just on a simple click. And you can see here one example. You can get the title of the grant, the investigator name, the co-investigator name, the academic unit where these people work, the funding agency, the start and end year. Number of articles in each journal also can be visualized. In this case, on the slide, you see Nature, and as you can see, they have it by year. And looks like College of Agriculture in 2010 has 6 articles published in Nature. Members of the College of Architecture had 6 articles published in Nature. This is amazing visualization. This visualization is from Scholars at Duke, and you can see that they actually talk about linking people. You can see that to linking people to their publications, grants, and other digital content stored in institutional repositories or in databases we own and license. We will let users browse connections among researchers, co-authors of publications, co-investigators of grants, and colleagues in organizations. VIVO can display scholarship from all disciplines: science, engineering, medical fields, humanities, arts, social sciences. VIVO is internationalized and has been translated to many languages. VIVO has been, or is actually in the process of being implemented in many countries around the world, including China, India, Spain, Netherlands, Germany, Brazil, Peru, and so on. VIVO consumes publications from ORCID, digital objects from Figshare, and it's of course responsive and it can be used on mobile devices. These are all the reasons why we would want VIVO. Once you, for example, you install VIVO, you can do whatever you want with the source code. Many institutions see this as a huge advantage. Being open source means that you can customize and extend VIVO in ways that are useful to your own organizations. For example, this is University of Wollongong. Some institutions have created VIVO, like they have done it. The site that is which focuses on finding expertise to emphasize this aspect of their system. This is a capability map from OpenVivo that shows how researchers are related to the same research topic, such as linked data and related terms in this example. You can see the slide. You can also see the people, of course, who are interested in that topic. This is an example from a consortium of universities like Mountain West Research Consortium, where they have put together a site that searches multiple VIVO sites to show people who share expertise or research interest. So, is this adorable VIVO for you? Of course it is. Now that you decided you want to go ahead with VIVO implementation, you need to start planning the VIVO implementation. The starting point is this DuraSpace wiki page, the Planning a VIVO Implementation Task Force created a couple of years ago, maybe now already 3 years ago. I was leading that task group. I had amazing colleagues working with me and designing this very useful resource for you. This is what we created. We basically separated the phases, which are 5. As you can see them, those are analysis, design, implementation. And then you have the roles like project management, outreach and engagement, data management, and technical development. And we will go now into the roles, like starting with project management, and explain what each phase means for this. So in project management, managing a VIVO project can really require everything from finding resources to facilitating the structure, mission, and strategy. Outreach and community engagement. Your VIVO community includes many stakeholders and sponsors from across the institution. Communications are critical, so that's why you need this important role. Data management. VIVO is all about the data, of course. You think about where to find it, how to load it, how to model it, how to keep it as updated as possible. Then you have the last role, technical development, very important one, the essential one. Developers, programmers, system admins, and other technical folks. Here we include everything that's system architecture, identify customizations, establishing data feeds, develop prototypes, build customized systems, test the performance, and so on. I already mentioned the 5 phases, but I'll repeat now all of them actually. Those are analysis, design, implementation, launch, and maintenance. And it's very important to tick in this way when you're planning your VIVO implementation in these phases and roles and how they interact and what they mean. So as I said, let's first start with the project management. The analysis here basically requires you to establish the governance. VIVO projects often cross institutional boundaries. To help make decisions and set directions, you'll need a project sponsor and one or more advisory groups, preferably including stakeholders such as researchers. It's very important to include them. These outreach contacts are likely roles to serve on advisory committees. In the design phase, you will be talking about branding your VIVO, how can you customize it, how can you define your scope, what do you want VIVO to do, which things will be used at your institution, what will you deliver, to whom, when. All these questions are very important to ask yourself when planning. Then you're going to have to request data feeds, but to request those data feeds, you will really need to have your scope defined first. You'll know, so you know which data your VIVO can get and display. Data management plan will be very helpful. Which data do you want? Where will you get it from? How do you want your VIVO to look? How often will you feed the data into VIVO, and what are the options for obtaining the data? As part of that plan, you'll need to identify the sources of the data you want to feed into VIVO. Implementation, of course, will include the creation of the launch strategy. Then you're going to have in the launch, you're going to have to think about publicity campaign, how your communication is important part of this strategy. Different audiences may need different messages, and this is true, and different ways to engage with the project. You can't talk to the different people in the same way. You need to develop talking points for different audiences. You need to think about implementing assessment plan. How will you know when your VIVO implementation is successful? You need to set goals or a mission statement endorsed by your VIVO governance group that you're gonna establish. These goals should be tied to your assessment plan. This is really very important. For maintenance, contribute to VIVO community. We really encourage you to contribute to VIVO community by participating in a working group, task group, write and share an application or a tool, make contribution to the core. For the outreach and community engagement role, analysis includes identifying the stakeholders, general institutional offices which are interested in using and contributing to a VIVO are those that collect or that use research information. These can be various review committees, grants management offices, institutional repository managers, public affairs, fundraising bodies, and others who need to find out about the research being conducted at the institution. These people can be invited to regular planning meetings or at least included in emails updating the status of the project. You really need to, at this point, gather use cases to answer questions or identify experts, or it might be used to generate formal, regular reports about research. So think about what are going to be your use cases. Design, here we are talking about sharing prototypes or showcasing existing VIVOs. Identify power users is part of the implementation, and I'll talk a little bit more about power users. Those are people that you will have to identify at each school, each college, that you're gonna train them to be able to help their immediate faculty or researchers with any questions they have. You will have to publicize VIVO, hold training sessions, and this is also very important. For maintenance, you will always look for new collaborators. Once your VIVO is live and in use, you will continue to engage with community members and identify new collaborators who would contribute VIVO data or use the VIVO data in their own work. So you want to be, the data has to flow both ways. VIVO can provide data to use for websites, which is already mentioned, in schools and departments, which benefit both the faculty and the VIVO instance by encouraging data currency. For the data management, the analysis will include identifying the potential data sources, coming, external data repositories. There are a variety of potential data sources that can feed into your VIVO instance. You'll need to identify which data types and data sources are best aligned with overall goals for your implementation. It can take some time to evaluate the data content and quality in order to forecast your ingest strategy. Design here includes mapping data to ontology, and this is where I think the technical services, especially cataloging metadata librarians, can be very useful. The value of the semantic web lies within the ability to define data using widely accepted ontologies. Understanding your data in order to accurately map to the VIVO ISF ontology is a very important step. Mapping to an ontology begins as a even conceptual design process. It can start just by writing everything on a piece of paper or using a diagramming tool such as VUE. It's open source. Your final data mapping will occur using a tool such as Karma, my favorite data modeling tool. you will really need to document your data cleanup strategy. Depending on the quality and variability in your data sources, you may need to plan for data cleanup and/or data munging, as we call it now, prior to loading into VIVO. It's also important to standardize and document your data cleanup strategy because you want to be consistent. Implementation will include preparing all the data loads. Depending on how your technical roles are defined, this task can be shared between your data staff, domain experts, or your developers. This is when ontology mapping goes from conceptual diagrams to actual RDF generation. An important thing to remember here is that you really need to document data provenance. Maintenance of the data in your VIVO instance requires thorough documentation of your data flow. During the launch phase, you will want to work with management to identify the resources and workflow by which data maintenance requests will be addressed. For maintenance, you will have to think here about managing the ontology updates. Ontologies can be updated to add or remove terms as a domain becomes better defined. Ontology changes can be initialized from within your institution or externally. The ontology change can be adapted at the level of the VIVO ontology, or it can be a change done locally within your institutions. Something that we call local extensions. And I've done that in the past. If I want to create local ontology extension data properties or classes for identifiers used in our various data sources on campus. Technical development. The analysis phase here will include becoming familiar with the top-level aspects of the VIVO system. Designing, you need to establish your data feeds. For most VIVO sites, the biggest challenge of a VIVO system is not actually VIVO itself. Instead, the challenge comes in populating VIVO with data from your institutional systems. Data challenges are often particular to the individual institution. And as we all know, that can be really challenging. You need to develop prototypes. You may need to develop your own programs and scripts for ingesting data, or maybe reuse something that's already been done in the VIVO community. That's why I mentioned you have listservs, we have a Slack channel, we have community events. You're free to contact anybody from the VIVO team and ask these questions. So in the VIVO community, the two favorite tools for this is the VIVO Harvester and Karma. Of course, I'm going to mention Karma, and we're going to talk about Karma more in the second part of this webinar series. Implementation, you need to build customized systems. Your customizations can include small changes, mostly for appearance purposes, or you may just think about larger customizations. And in that case, you should learn something more complicated, but that's not an issue for a developer, for a programmer. For the launch phase, you need to provide system support. This means, as with any other IT project, right? You should expect VIVO to require ongoing support. This includes things like backup, security checks, upgrades to operating systems, and so on. Maintenance will include plan to develop new customizations for your VIVO installation. As your users gain experience, they will likely request new data and new displays. So, what are the VIVO success indicators? You have what it takes to make VIVO successful. Do you actually have what it takes VIVO successful? Do you have institutional sponsors, high-level leadership who wants it to be successful and can see the value? Ideally, involved in the project and engage. Those people really need to be leading the way. They can be an advisory group and stand up to all the naysayers. Competing systems can be difficult, especially if they all require input. And also here you have to think, can you share data with other systems? Since you're asking for data from other systems, can you also share your data? Commitment to ongoing support. Do your sponsors realize that this project may take many years to implement and customize? Align with key institutional initiatives, something on the strategic plan or the mission of your institution. For example, the system can help fulfill an item on the strategic plan or support new academic programming or provide information to new senior hires or support the missions like some VIVO instances have done. And I cannot stress enough that it's all about goals. You really, for example, you saw some of the different implementations. So which ones matches yours? Which one matches your vision of your implementation? You really need to clarify your institution's needs and goals. What's the purpose of this system? You'll review them again and again. Sometimes too many goals can be confusing. Once you know your goals, you can review the tools and compare strengths to fit your needs. And it's important to keep them closely tied to make sure you accomplish your goals. Avoid getting too ambitious initially. I really recommend to start small. This brings us to the rollout strategies that are important kind of to think about. And the goals and the scopes, it kind of ties into that. You would want to consider either the broad and shallow approach, where you roll out to large group of people and organizations. Provide basic data about them, for example, like something like extended directory. Add more data in test and staging versions, and add incrementally, right? Or you may consider the narrow and deep approach, where you roll out to a subset of people and provide more data, grants, publications, courses, and add more people, organizations in test version. And I would caution you that it's very hard to implement broad and deep at the same time. For example, our first example, actually, we have a goal, public profiles for 3,000 people. Our strategy would be a simple profile initially with extended directory information. In this second example, our goal is to show collaborations between 100 people. Strategy would be people, grants, publications with relationships between them. That's what we want to show in our VIVO instance. The third example, the goal is to encourage maintenance of data for reuse. The strategy would be to introduce editing functionality with private profiles, coupled with a communication campaign, including something like schedule. And of course, you're going to need to think about staffing. For a large rollout, it's good to have an experienced programming lead. You will need to have programmers, developers, 1 to 3 full-time employees, database administrators, and system administrators for network servers. On the project side, you need someone to keep things moving. You need that project or product manager. This person keeps all the balls in the air, drives the project with goals in mind, recognizes and escalates barriers. Data analyst or curator ontologist monitors data feeds coming in, data going out. This person can be technical and, of course, from the library, information science background, can take load of programmers, but with clear boundaries. communicator, trainer, outreach person. This person will need to meet users, including faculty, needs to track requests and make priority transparent. This person really needs to be calm, reassuring under pressure. You need to find that person. You may have other resources that you can draw from. And of course, it's a good idea to include them on your VIVO team in some way. Make your team as big as you can, because all of these people, all of these librarians in various roles, and also scholarly communication officers can really be very helpful. And I cannot stress enough how important it is to have the chief academic officers, the grant offices, all the news communication offices behind you, institution-wide, not just, for example, library-wide. You will need to consider for this budgeting and funding the costs that are involved with IT infrastructure and human resources. Always estimate pessimistically and deliver early. Different funding models in use. I mean, I can suggest few, but for starter, seed funding in the beginning and ongoing funding later. You can just think about this. Who will actually pay the bill in some, if I want to say it like that, or just sponsor this project? Is it going to be the provost or the library, or you both going to split the bill? And think about who wants or needs VIVO the most, and approach those people and make them become your sponsors and maybe contribute with some staff resources or some additional funding. And of course, the communication strategies is something that you really need to think about. And your strategy needs to be driven by goals and implementation plan. The big and broad uses institutional resources, right? You can use the central website, news office, provost meeting, academic council, anything that you can think of on the bigger scale. Messages will be simple and communicated to many people. The narrow and deep strategy, this will use more local resources, in-person events, training, user guides. These messages can be more complicated if they can be controlled. Tailor the communication to emphasize, point out your goals. So always have in mind your goals, your scope, and tailor the strategies for rollout and for communication around those. And of course, you're going to need a plan. You need to document your goals, the what, right? The strategy, the when and the how, and the tactics. Timeline to include which messages are sent when. Tactics can include publicizing on the homepage, sending an email, sending tweets, news stories, videos. Events should be part of the strategy, of course, and they are very important. You can present at faculty meetings and make yourself invited to those faculty meetings, even if it's a last minute. Always have something ready to go. You need to focus on specific benefits to each stakeholder. There are many. And keep sending your message because it will get lost in the flow. And most importantly, be really patient. It gets easier over time. People don't like change, but they get used to new things. In a way, you can think of this like community management, facilitate engagement, conversations. You need to stay in touch with people. And this is really a full-time job. You may consider actually you may hear conflicting messages and nonsensical statements that make it impossible to communicate. These are some examples, and I'm sure some of you have already heard this, but proceed anyway. Here is a quick step-by-step process for creating a convincing elevator speech for your VIVO from the best VIVO project manager there is. It's Julia Trimmer from Duke University. So she recommends it's always helpful to refine your VIVO pitch or your persuasive description of the system and its purposes. Typically, you'll need more than one pitch to explain different aspects to different people. We already mentioned this. Avoid describing the technical details of your implementation, the data loads, and etc. I am guilty of this. I've done this way too many times, and believe me, nobody wants to hear about this. In summary, you need to start by reviewing your goals because these explain the people to the people what you are doing and why. Think about possible stakeholders, groups, and who's going to benefit, particularly the people you need to engage in order to meet your success criteria. To create the pitch, you need to rewrite the benefits with the strongest first, addressing what's in it for me, for the stakeholder, right, from his perspective. Be sure to include goals in terms of why they can help the stakeholder. Write some tweets using active, strong verbs. Add write-up like a spoken statement that you can say in 60 seconds. Communicators can help tremendously, so bounce this off these folks for their feedback. Make them your friends because your pitch is really important. Keep saying the same things over and over and over. That's what it takes to really spread the word. These are some best practices to support. A large group of users can be facilitated by providing materials and training. Again, be sure and recognize your support network. Have user groups meeting to give them a chance to network. Special events with food, right? Everybody likes food. Give them time to chat. These are folks who don't always get much special treatment. Make sure you include data owners in support. Let them know if you are going to refer users to them or not. For example, be sure to tell the grants office that you'll be referring questions about grants to their office so they don't feel like you're taking over and doing their job for them. And this is a slide that we usually share at the VIVO camp. It's the Duke support model. I really love what Duke University has done with their VIVO, and this is all due to the great project manager, Julia Trimmer, because as you can see, their support centers on the power user. To address questions in each department and unit, they identify and train power users in each area. These are the first level of support. If the power user can answer the question, they can submit a help ticket to the Scholars at Duke team. Users can also call the help desk, who would also submit a help ticket to the team. They reply with an answer or route the ticket to a developer, to the library, or to the appropriate data owner or system of record. So slides, of course, are going to be shared, and I encourage you to look up Scholars at Duke and contact them if you have questions about how they have gone and accomplished such an amazing project. So this is kind of the end of the slides for today. I would like at this time to thank the members of the VIVO community that have had an enormous influence on me over the years, some of them from the very beginning and some of them later on. This is acknowledgement in alphabetical order. Paul Albert, he's at Weill Cornell Medicine. They're doing outstanding job over there. They're building new tools that you really need to attend some of the calls where they present in the VIVO Absent tools, where they present their new tools that probably gonna end up in the VIVO core code. Jim Blake, the amazing developer from Cornell University, Michael Conlon, the VIVO project director, my favorite person, John Corson Riker, who retired from Cornell University, John Ferreira from Cornell University, Huda Khan from Cornell University, Mohammed Javed from Cornell University, and last but not least, Julia Trimmer. And that's it for today. And we'll move into more information about VIVO and the role of librarians in part 2 on March 14.
Thank you, Violeta. This has been a really interesting session. I learned a lot more about VIVO and about its implementation that I didn't already know. And we now have time for questions. And if you've not yet done so, please type your questions into the question box. And while we're waiting, you talked about data cleanup. Is there a specific sort of data cleanup process that you've had to specifically do, and do you have any tools to recommend?
Various schools, various VIVO sites use different data cleanup tools depending on the local expertise, right? It's usually depend on whatever the developers are most used to. So it can be simple Python scripts, it can be, I've used, for example, OpenRefine, I use Karma for data cleanup. So it can be really a wide variety of tools. It's just going to depend on the local resources and the local skill sets.
Sure. And it looks like mostly VIVO's been done at an institution level. Has anybody used it on a hosted solution yet?
There are, for example, symplectic elements, for example, can help you with such a thing. You can also talk to Clarivat Analytics. They can help you with such projects.
Great. Some people don't have, I'm in a small institution, and some don't have quite the number of people that are required to do it themselves. So great.
So in those cases, I'd really recommend you reach out to Clarivat Analytics, and they have the data, they have all the information, they have expertise, and they can really be very useful. In most cases, all of the libraries already subscribe to the services from them, and it's going to be pretty easy to set up.
Great. And sort of, it does seem to require a lot of resources to implement. If you're at an institution that doesn't seem to quite have the right resources, is this not a good option for us, or is there a way to sort of have this be an implementation with a smaller team?
In those cases where there is not enough resources, then you're gonna have to start maybe small. Start with one college or one department and just expand from that. That's where the rollout strategy and the focus and the scope comes into play. And once you build that support on campus and you start talking to everybody and showcasing what you've done on that prototype, then more people will buy into it, and you will get support. And that's where I said some of the resources you can get help from other offices, not just the library. You can get resources from the provost office or from any other office. So the central IT office depends on how everything works on each campus. I know that For example, well, I was at Texas A&M, the initiative started at the library, and of course, we slowly started building the partnerships with everybody on campus. Then at Northwestern, it was an initiative from a different unit, but the library was helping. So it's going to be different in each institution and each setting. And for example, Duke Scholars at Duke is an excellent example of how much you can work with all these different people and different offices on campus. It's managed by the Office of Faculty Affairs, but the symplectic elements implementation is at the library. So, and the institutional repository, of course, is at the library. So they work with them to connect to the articles or any other scholarly works that are in the institutional repository or symplectic elements data.
So it sounds like it's actually a good tool to start having more of those conversations within the departments.
Not just, yes, and cross departments. You will have a chance to really show, if the initiative is from the library, you will have a chance to show this is what the libraries of the future are able to do. And we do have the expertise, we do have the data, we license that data, we all license, pay, huge subscription fees to Scopus, to Web of Science, to all of these other data sources. And we build institutional repositories, so we do have all these data stores available to us. We just need VIVO to pull that data into one, to be able to showcase all the research that's going on campus and display it, and like scholars at Cornell have done with the new implementation, they display such amazing visualizations and they can generate such outstanding reports from there.
And we do have a question from an audience member. Any recommendation on researcher name disambiguation?
The names, the good thing about the VIVO system, and because the data in your VIVO will come from your institution, and each researcher has its own university ID, right? And that can be your disambiguation in your local systems, right? So I'm not sure if the question is for the VIVO locally, or if it refers to when we talk about getting data from outside data sources like the publishers, how you disambiguate that. So there are a variety of ways that you can do that, but ORCID ID, for example, is one of the ways to help this process, because if you map and if you add the VIVO into your, if you add the ORCID ID into your VIVO instance, then it's going to be easy for the system to recognize the scholarly outputs of that person. Of course, if they are already associated with the ORCID ID, or with the researcher ID, or with the Scopus ID. Once you have the IDs from these various data sources, like Scopus, Web of Science, or ORCID, it's very easy to disambiguate the names.
Okay, and the audience member does say that they're referring to linking their internal unique IDs to names on publications, so by making that link together.
Yes, so exactly. So if everybody knows this is a very difficult task. That's and it's my area kind of interest and research, and uniquely identifying the researchers is an important part of all of this, the whole landscape. So that's why at both places where I was before, at Texas A&M and Northwestern, we really pushed, I led the efforts at Northwestern especially for obtaining ORCID IDs for all of our researchers. So then it's very easy when you get information automatically from Crossref or from EuroPubMed or from PubMed, and that ID is already associated in PubMed or Crossref with the publication, then it's very easy for your local system to disambiguate those. And both Clarivate Analytics helps you with this. They have a good way of disambiguating, and also I've seen the symplectic elements in action, especially at Northwestern, where we implemented it really successfully, how all of this works. So even if the name is a very common name, John Smith, for example, if I have his Scopus ID or ORCID ID, I can just add that to his profile, and then I won't have trouble gathering all of his specific publications.
And we have time for one more question. What are VIVO's main advantages versus the subscription research profiling solutions, besides reoccurring costs versus the one-time cost?
VIVO is open source. You just need to find people that probably already exist in your institution that can be willing to work on this project. You already, as a library, you already have access to all of the information that you need to populate your VIVO. For example, you get the directory information in your ILS, right? In the circulation module, you have that data already. So you have the information about your researchers, you have the information about publications, you build institutional repositories, either hosted or open source, Fedora, DSpace, whatever, you already have that. So it's just additional project that's not gonna cost you a lot of money, just finding the enthusiastic people that are willing to work on this.
Great. Wanted to let everybody know that we're glad they could be with us today. You will soon receive a short online evaluation form. And please take a few minutes to respond to the questions on the online evaluation form. Your comments are very valuable, and they help the ALCTS Continuing Education Committee plan future events. The email will also include links to today's slides and the recording. You now have the opportunity to receive a certificate of attendance, and that information will also be in the email. I'd like to thank our presenter, Violeta Ilik, and thanks also to members of the Continuing Education Committee, Felicity Dykus and Joseph Nicholson, and to Jasley Coley from the ALCTS office. The support they provide make it possible for us to present these webinars. ALCTS has other continuing education events coming up. We now have several more webinars this spring, including a 6-webinar series from MARC to BibFrame, linked data on the ground, between March 7th and May 2nd. See the ALCTS website to register or to find out more about these events. ALCTS also offers web courses, which are 4 to 6 weeks long, as well as 2-day email discussions. Our next e-forum will be on March 20th, discussing cataloging and metadata education. Check the website for information on upcoming courses and discussions. Thank you all for joining us today, and this concludes our session.